Thank you, Balaji. So, all you brands out here looking at scaling up your business, obviously, franchising is an important or an easy way to scale up, or is it not? So, to know more about this, let me invite on the dais, on the stage, Rohit Murthy, the Managing Director of AKB Group. Rohit, welcome. We have Biraja Rawat, the founder of Biggie's Burger. Can we have some claps for everyone who's joining in? We have Ankit Patel, who's the Executive Director and the CEO of the Belgian Waffles Company. It's my friend Rahul Seth, the co-founder of Burger Thing. Parvesh Pandey, Director Roxy. And Mahesh Reddy, the CEO of Go Pizza. Looks like a super interesting panel, Rohit, and I'm sure you're going to do the needful. Over to you. All the best, gentlemen. Enjoy the session. And audience, keep your questions ready at the end if we can squeeze in a couple of questions.
Hi, good afternoon, all of you. So, I'm sure you guys know everyone sitting on the dais. They didn't do an introduction, so I'm going to jump right to some questions that I've made, and of course, at the end of it, if there's any Q&As, I would like to know. Am I audible? You can't hear. Okay. Okay, so we're now in the time of a lot of new brands coming into the country, a lot of new brands being made in the country, a lot of homegrown brands, etc. And of course, franchising has been one hot topic in the F&B industry to see how and why it works with some companies, why it doesn't work with some companies, what's happening in the whole ecosystem. So there's a few questions I'm just going to throw around and have my fellow panelists to throw some light on the queries. So the first one that I have for you guys is franchising the correct approach for scaling up for everyone? Or does it depend on the vision of the brand or what you've thought about for your expansion?
Hi, I represent Go Pizza.
Mesh, closer.
Okay. Go Pizza is a South Korean brand. We are available at South Korea, Indonesia, Singapore, and just entering Thailand and China also. The question, at Thailand and China, we are entering through CP Group. And we have, that's a Masters and Franchisee Group. And Singapore and Korea, it's a franchisee. India is the only place where it's a company-owned outlet. Now the question, are we ready for the franchisee in India? I feel is our country ready for the franchisee for India? Because what happens now, lot of our entrepreneurs today think it's easy to run the food industry. Let's take franchisee, let's invest some money. But when we actually operate, you know how difficult it is. Unless until our SOPs are set, unless until the master franchisee SOPs are set, the franchisee is difficult to run the business. Hence, we decided that it will be company-owned operated outlets in India because as you all know, the potential of India as compared to the other country, with the GDP, with the population, with the consumption, all this favors that sales and EBITDA is going to be year-on-year great. One thing I should say that we all are lucky that we are at the right place and at the right time, and next 10 years is for F&B and is for company-owned outlets if you operate with proper SOPs.
Anyone has a counterpoint to that?
So I think the way Mahesh pointed it out, right SOPs is something which any brand requires. So I believe in the whole concept of hybrid, wherein companies should definitely do both because that suits the Indian market. Okay. For us, now we are present across more than 430 stores, and we operate on a hybrid model, wherein the SOPs, the training, audits, everything is set. But while we operate the company-owned stores, it helps us understand the pain points, what franchisees will go through. and helps us course correct them. So I definitely feel, a hybrid approach suits India because, India definitely is a vast geography. So someone understanding from a company-owned purely model might get difficult, as well as when you do purely franchising, you don't understand, what typically would be any challenges which a store faces is how I would like to put it.
So a question to that. Both of you said SOPs need to be set, right? So setting SOPs is one, but having that KT, the knowledge transfer of SOPs to the franchises and making sure they're following it, how difficult is that? That's the more important point to address, right? Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, no, it's very difficult. So when we onboard people, franchisees especially, we go through an extensive training program, try and get them to understand the importance of anything. There's a very long sort of stretched out process. On top of that, we also have like regular P&L meetings every month where we look and optimize their P&L, look at what they're doing right, what the areas are to for improvement, etc. There are mystery audits, regular audit reports that are going out. And despite all of this, it is still, like memory is very selective when it suits you. So it is still a big challenge, but we have to invest. For us, we just invest a lot in retraining these people and constantly revisiting the franchisees and addressing the importance of some of these things.
Hi everyone. So as a brand, Biggest Burger, we are at 115 locations and we have bootstrapped through franchising network. So for us in our ecosystem, franchising is the root and the key. So I believe every company has to think on the basics, setting up the SOP. Until and unless as a company we cannot run a store, we should not franchise it. So I believe it's all about the right time of a company's evolution. At the right time, you need to franchise the concept. So today, just like a second source of revenue, I believe the whole financial ecosystem is accepting franchising as an instrument or as a financial tool of a second source of revenue. So I believe in a growing market like India, franchising is going to be an option, an opportunity for a lot of to-be entrepreneurs or a lot of middle-class people who are aspiring to be. It's an aspiration. So first of all, we have to set the brand as an aspired brand, and for being an aspired brand and carrying it as an aspired brand across, the basic fundamentals, the skeleton and the roots has to be deeply rooted. We cannot sell a franchise and ask him to buy the raw materials locally or do the marketing locally or do the operations or tech locally. When someone is taking a franchise, primarily they are taking because of the name and the aspiration to earn some money or the aspiration to be attached with the brand. And that can be fulfilled only when we feel that our basics are correct. So I feel, yes, without franchising, so let's say we take all big names like KFC or a McD or a Subway or Domino's, everyone in India or the globe are operating 90 to 95% of their stores are franchise owned. So the selection of franchise, the time of franchising, whether you are a franchise matured concept or not, is very important. And to add that, in India, we are never educated about franchising as an occupation. We say, I'll be an engineer or a doctor. No one says that my kid will be owning a lot of franchises. Till now, it has not been treated as a serious opportunity or a serious skill set. So I believe Indian ecosystem, Indian legal system also has a lot of things to add to build this franchise ecosystem stronger.
So, yeah. Hi, guys. A small, quick question. Which is the biggest coffee brand in the world? Starbucks? Yeah. And which is the biggest burger brand in the world? McDonald's? Which is the second biggest burger brand in the world? Burger King. Which is the pizza brand in the world? Domino's. Which is the second best pizza brand in the world? Pizza Hut. Which is the biggest Chinese chain in the world? P.F. Chang's. There is something common between all of these international brands which has got global, worldwide presence. One thing is that they're all American. and there's something which we need to learn in India. What is so special about the US which create such strong brands, and how are they creating these brands? What is the fundamental pillars of their success? What is the bridge between their mission and the vision versus the reality? I think the biggest challenge which we face in India is the understanding of 4 pillars, which in the organization structure of especially a QSR brand. I mean, India has got some great brands like Haldiram and all, done phenomenally well in terms of scaling. But there are 4 things which are very important. One is, while you are looking at a larger vision of expanding your brand across the country or across the world, the first thing which is important is the purpose, why you are doing this. And at some point of time, from the business point of view, we need to also start looking at the organization from a purpose point of view, at what is it that your brand is actually adding value to this society. Second, and that really is important because it aligns your employees. In India today, biggest challenge is if you ask any of us and we say, what is the biggest challenge which you guys face? The first would be the attrition, right? Staff. I was talking to a very senior person who was the HR director of a national brand which employs more than 10,000 employees. He said every 6 months, about 6,000 people change hands. So imagine it's more than 100% of attrition. So how do we hold people? American brands actually are very good into handling their people and processes. So that's why I said that number 1 pillar which we as Indian organizations need to look at is purpose. The second is the values. What are the values of the organization? Do we really impart this kind of knowledge to people that these are the 3-4 values which intact all of us together in the organization? The third is your practices, which entails all your processes. Amazing. I've been a part of handling Hard Rock Cafe across India as a director of operations. I learned, they sent me for 2 months to Orlando to understand what the importance of processes is. If you look at a burger plating in Hard Rock, London, in Hyde Park, the onion and the tomato garnish is at 2 o'clock. It will be the same in Tonga Islands in Pacific. It will be same in India, in Bombay, and Bangalore, and Delhi. And that is the detailing of the standard operating processes which they have emphasized upon. They support us with websites, with videos. Auditings happen so strong. So I think the third pillar is the process. And of course, the product, the consistency which comes with auditing. So these 4 pillars are so critical for all of us to understand, put it in place before even we start thinking about franchising, right? That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. So that was leading me to my next question. What's the right time to start franchising your business? Straight away in the starting, or do you give it some time? Do you give it some X number of shops? Do you give it some X number of geographies? Do you give it some X number of learnings? What's the right time to start franchising?
So Rohit, in my limited experience, I think unit economics is very important. Sometimes we feel that, in hospitality, there are 2 intelligences which we need to have. One is the personal intelligence. I can make some great products. I can make a fantastic chili chicken brand. I can do a great burger brand. The first outlet can be a hit. Doesn't mean the second outlet or the 10th outlet will be a hit until you understand the unit economics very well. So if you can think about the economies of scale and you can have the study of the scientific data which are supporting you to expand your business, even the first outlet which is not profitable doesn't mean that you will not be successful. So I think if you crack the unit economics well, you have got it right.
Anyone else have an input for that question?
I believe we need to check whether is our model ready for franchisee. Is the country ready for the franchisee? Now, in one country, if it's successful, it doesn't mean every country it will be and every state it will be. Normally, people jump into franchisee that there's a fund which has come and we can expand and the numbers will come. But until the challenge, what will happen is the consistency of the product across the state. And as you know, different people and different front end is the challenge. And after COVID, we all know how all the QSRs are expanding. And the biggest challenge is the front end. So when the front end is the biggest challenge, and every month we keep seeing the attrition happening, and the training is a big challenge. But now with the technology playing, and technology has to play a role, and that's AI coming into the role, and that's how we have started that's how we're called food tech company. And that's how it's easy for us to operate consistency across everywhere. So is the model ready? Is the technology ready? Is the consistency ready? Then I feel it's the right time. Otherwise, it's like jumping the gun. let's expand, let's get more people, let's open everywhere outlets, then it's going to be a challenge.
So you're saying it's more your environment
Exactly.
that determines when you get
Exactly.
into the franchise.
Model, product, acceptable by the customers. It's not just because I have 10 outlets or 100 outlets, we should do the franchisee. That's not the way to look at the time of entering the franchisee. Unless until all these basics are not set, otherwise it's going to be tough because people say, यार डाल देते हैं पैसा और सुबह जब हर रोज 5 बजे उठ के देखना पड़ेगा, it's tough. And because it's not, daily you'll have to get up at 5 o'clock and you'll have to see whether your cook or chef has come or not. And afterwards, the same franchisee will say, I've invested, nothing is happening. I thought it's too shining. Franchisee, F&B, even I have one restaurant to run. It's so easy to take a franchisee and so many brands coming up. I've also invested, I also run. I do 2-3 types of franchisee business. And that's how we tell in the society. But it's not day to day. That's not the fact. And you know how difficult it is because you all are from F&B. It's a challenge. So it's a consistency which is a concern.
So I feel, from a timing perspective, it's, your franchisee will be the first customer for you. Okay, he is gonna end up dealing with, end consumers, everyone. So as long as you can keep them happy with the right product, while everyone touched upon product, that's the most critical aspect, product, when I say it's just not the physical product, but also the training of how to make that product. And then the supply chain of it, because a lot of times brands do scale up, end up having multiple stores, and then realize, supply chain is a major challenge. They cannot supply to the franchisee. That's when they have to scale back. That's a very bad scenario. So you understand what is critical to your business. So that could be, trainings, audit, supply chain, and then take a call, because at the end, if that first franchisee is happy, he's gonna bring you multiple franchisees. So that would be the most critical aspect of the timing, I would say.
So as per me, I believe strongly that franchising has to be in the DNA. So if a company at the perception is deciding that I want to expand through franchising, but not very immediately, but after a certain level of maturity, as per the induction of franchise DNA, I believe everything will take place. May it be tech, may it be adoption of SOP, or may it be adoption of training the franchises. These things only will come only when you have franchise as a strong pillar in your concept as a business model. If you do not keep franchise as a business model, then I don't think the adherence of the SOPs or the adoption of franchise-related tech or franchise-related aspects will be quickly done. The second thing is, as a brand, if we are planning for franchising, we have to understand how complex or how easy are our day-to-day operations. Let's say we want to franchise a microbrewery, or also let's say we want to franchise a burger brand, which is an assembling point. So typically, in a burger brand like us, our front-end outlets are just treated as an assembling point. But in a microbrewery, along with preparing the product, service also plays one of the most vital role, along with the ambience. So I believe the right time can be covered with a faster speed only when your DNA has franchise as an aspect or aspiration. Accordingly, rest all things will be adjusting to that.
Okay. Do you have any input for that timing?
Hi. Yeah, so I mean, it's a little bit of what all these gentlemen said. Like, I really believe that the business model is where you start. Like, you don't have anything if you don't have a solid business model. But then it's also how well am I doing across different, in different demographic areas. Like, I can do well in a Gurgaon, but am I going to do well in Dwarka, or am I going to do well in Bangalore? Does the palette match? Once I expand to different cities, is my supply chain going to be as consistent? Like he said, am I going to be able to maintain the operating procedures? I've known of so many brands that have opened, just once they start franchising, have gone like one outlet in Bangalore, one outlet in Orissa, one outlet. And then you can't run it because you can't optimize your marketing. It's very difficult to sort of get your brand to be popular in a region where it's not known by just, if you have only one outlet there. So I don't think there's any one right answer to it, but you have to have all the basics in place. You have to have done it yourself, like Vishesh said earlier, enough to be able to, fix a problem for the franchisee, because like you also correctly said, they're your first customer. So if you can't make them happy and you can't give them the results that they want, then this business is not sort of going anywhere. So it's once you've figured out all the basic elements and you know that you can tackle a situation in any one of these given variables and you know you have a solution to it, that's, I feel, the right time to expand.
Okay. So the next question that I have, I think, is a very hot topic right now. You've got 4 models of running outlets. Of course, one is the company-owned, company-operated, like you said, Coco. One is your company-owned, franchise-operated. One is your franchise-owned, company-operated. One is your franchise-owned and franchise-operated. So what's growing today? I see a lot of franchise-invested, company-operated now, a new concept. You just invest and you sit back. So is it FICO, FOCO, COCO, COFO, whatever you call it? What's happening today in India? What's more successful? What's working for who? Your thoughts?
I believe it depends on who is the franchise. If the franchise is an institution, like the Vianney Jubilant or any of the institutions who have an experience of running an F&B brand, if you are doing with them, it can be a FOFO model. They own, they operate. If it is an individual who is aspiring to get into F&B or that, I think this is what is the ecosystem that is being built over a period of time, and we foresee that this is to franchising as an ecosystem to grow massively in future. So in that way, if you are franchising to an individual who has an aspiration of taking one, then multiple outlets, I believe a lot of brands are avoiding those paths because there are a lot of loopholes. But in that concept, FOCO works better because the end-to-end operation is with you and the investment is done by someone else. So the load of capex initially is not on you. And you know that you are going to give your best. Again, I come back to the DNA concept where you have to be convinced with the location, on your product, on your unit economics, and on your capability and credibility of running the store successfully. So for me, if it is an individual, it's a FOCO model. If it's an institution, it's a FOFO model.
But if you're going to scale up with 100, 200, 300 outlets, are you going to have the resource, time, and capability from a company standpoint to figure out each individual application, whether it's going to be FICO, FOCO, or are you going to give, no, we are only going to do this model, or we are only, and make some exceptions?
So what happens is now there are a lot of NBFCs into account. The finance arrangement is not a big problem today. At this point of time, working capital loans, debenture loans, there are a lot of different varieties of financial arrangement available in the country. So as and when your company grows and the brand grows, institutions will be asking for your franchise. At that point of time, typically you can decide a demographic or a cluster or a state which will be FOFO operated, just like MACD has divided into 2 parts, or else the KFC has divided into 2 parts. But for a brand like us who are aspiring to go to that 500 numbers, to build that impression of brand, we need checkpoints. We need checkpoints to be set. So for a checkpoint of 200, 300 outlets, maybe we'll be going with FOCO model. And once we feel like we have decent amount of muscle to negotiate with the companies who are franchising, we will go with a FOFO model.
So a dynamic phased-wise model is what
hybrid model, hybrid. Yeah. And again, it will depend on the city. So let's say we are looking at a metro city where the ease of operation is there, and we believe that a central team can be established and do the things. We'll be going for more of a FOCO model. For cities which are far-sighted and where still there is a demand of a product, or else in a lighter node, we want to experiment, we'll go in a FOFO. Yeah.
Mahesh?
I believe it again depends for each company, depending on the model of the store. For example, for Go Pizza, we can open outlet from 200 square feet to 2,000 square feet. Now, when it is 200 to 2,000, we can open in airport, we can open in mall, we can open in college institute, we can open in hospitals, we can open all the verticals. So now when we can open in all the verticals, it depends how many numbers we can expand. Now, this one South Korean company, as against what you said, all companies are US. So we have one South Korean company that's available in all Southeast countries, and we will be going to US now by year end. So we were looking at how do we do this, how do we increase the numbers, how do we open. So first is the format is ready, that it can be open in any square feet. The model is ready. The product is accepted. As you all know, in India at least, after biryani, samosas, jamun, burger and pizza is well accepted. So India is also ready. So we were looking at when Singapore is a very small country, as you know, it's equal to Bangalore. There we have a franchisee model. So when we want to enter China, and it's too difficult to enter China at present stage. So that was the time when master franchisee we took, and that's easy to enter there. But India, I feel, is the franchisee as educative as the company? Easy from the F&B background? Because how many numbers can he open, and can the consistency happen over there? So the question to it all depends on the company management, how many numbers and verticals and which all states to decide when the franchisee has to come in or when the master franchisee has to take. Master franchisee can be given from the beginning, like in India we have a JV model, but it's not there in other countries. So it again depends country to country, state to state, product to product, model to model, and scalable model, and can it be open in all verticals? Because all the brands wants to expand more and more, but where do we do? So India is the only country in the world, because you know what's happening in the Europe, you know how US recession is treating, but India is only the right place, and I feel we should expand, and this is the right time that everybody should look at the model to scale it on the basis of unit economics.
A quick question to add on to your answer. You said there's already a certain level of education in the public, right? And if you're going to take on a franchise, you're expecting someone to have an F&B background. Now, if you got your SOPs in place, if you got your training modules in place, how important is an F&B background or an F&B experience critical when it comes to taking up your franchise? Because the minute you see some people may not have that background, but they may be really, enthusiastic about the business. They may have the fire, the passion. So how important would you
So we
value?
did have failures in few of the countries because of different backgrounds. That's how we bought the AI technology and robotics. And as you all know, India is the only place where labor is not a concern, and our labor cost is still low, and the real estate cost is still low in our P&L. But in Singapore and other countries, you know how much it takes. And that's how we bought the AI technology and the technology-driven F&B company for a consistency. Then we can see, irrespective of what background he's got, we can scale it up.
Any of your thoughts for FICO?
Yeah. So I don't believe F&B background is necessary, because as a brand you are providing them with training, everything. So primarily all the muscle power is provided by the brand. Okay. So I look for right entrepreneurs, that zeal in them to open the stores and everything. So they could be someone just out of college, someone who's retired, but that passion needs to be there, in that person to drive it. One aspect which we closely look, how often they can visit the store, because if you look at as a side hustle or something like that, then it's bound to fail. So you need to give it that time and dedication, and you need to have a zeal. F&B background and that knack of selling is what a brand can teach them. They can provide them. So we end up giving entire supply chain support, everything. So that's why for us, definitely it is the entrepreneurial habit of the person which matters.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of a very similar sort of mindset that entrepreneurial bent of mind is far more critical for someone to make an outlet successful. The way I look at it, it's as a brand, it's our responsibility to provide the product, provide something that works and sells across various geographies. Like I said, like in our case, we tried all of these things. We took it to the market even, right? So what we need from a person on the ground is eventually this is a hyper-local game. Whether you win or lose depends on the competition you have in that region, how much footfall you're getting at that spot, what's happening in that area. So someone who is focused on making the business work will sort all the other problems out. Also, I feel with a lot of our brands, it's the case that they essentially just assembly units. There's not so much actual cooking and presentation and typical hospitality skill that goes into our businesses, because all of that is done in the back end. So like with burgers, for example, the production's done at the back end. The outlet itself is just an assembly unit, right? So as long as you follow the SOPs, there's not that much you can get wrong in terms of, and it's, people are coming up, getting the order at the thing, at the POS, taking it back. So there's not that much you can get wrong in terms of hospitality. But someone who is focused on making the business work will figure out all these other things on their own.
So last question before I open it up for some questions. This question is to you for the audience. If someone is to consider a franchise business, if someone were to look at investing in any of the 4 models that we discussed about, what are the key points that they need to look out for? What are the red flags they need to look out for? And as a company perspective as well, what are you looking for in a franchise? And of course, like I asked, the vice versa.
So for a franchise, I believe it is the trust on the concept. It is the aspiration, and whether, so let's say someone who is liking burger as a product cannot be happy with an automobile franchise. So you have to have that aspiration to be an owner of a burger franchise or a automobile franchise or whatsoever it is. So I believe it's a core responsibility of the franchise also to evaluate every brand before taking it up. Because in India, franchise doesn't mean money. It's not like you just deposit a franchise fee and invest and money will start flowing to come inside. There is a lot of amount of effort that is being put by the franchise, and as a brand we franchise different locations because we do not understand the demographic in those micro markets rightly. So from a franchise end, there is a good amount of responsibility of theirs to do a recce of the brand, to trust the product, to be flagged with the product, and to have the product as an aspiration or the brand as the aspiration. And as a franchisor, I believe we look for coachable people. We look for people who has decently deep pockets, who will not collapsing in bad times. And patience is one more key thing that we look forward for a franchise.
So primarily, I feel I'll talk about the other side, how to choose a franchisee from a people's perspective. So one, you should look what kind of support the franchisee provides in terms of, your menu development, entire understanding of, the marketing support, what all hand-holding, right from training, retraining, if something is going wrong, how much they have a legal team to support you or on those kind of terms. So look for those kind of aspects when you are looking for a franchisee, as well as I always say that look for success stories. Primarily a single franchisee ending up taking more stores. That's one aspect which you should look at. So my friend mentioned about the entire story of US brands scaling up. The major reason was primarily because one single franchisee owner had multiple stores. So that starts the entire success story. So start looking out for brands which give you that potential, that platform to scale up your own business in a way wherein they become like a family and give you that means to open multiple stores. And that should be one aspect which any brand should provide and they should look into.
All good. So, do you have any questions for the panelists, for me, for anyone? I'll come to you next.
I'm Shivi Javlia. I represent NH8 Restaurants, which is a Rajasthani theme-based restaurant. So my question is, we have not seen many Indian food brands which are successful in franchisee. As Pravesh sir talked about the values of US, but the thing is when we talk about even Haldiram, we can say that this Haldiram is not as good as the other one, but we never say about the McDonald's the same kind of thing, that McDonald's in HSR is better than the McDonald's in Indranagar. So how can we do this that we can make a name in franchising for the Indian foods as well?
Quite interestingly, none of the brands which I spoke about actually were the origins of Indian cuisine. If you look at historically today, if you try to make a sambar and an idli brand, people will have different perspectives because there is no perfect recipe of an idli or there is no perfect recipe of a sambar. People know what they're eating in India. For Haldiram, people know what chaats we are eating and what is the flavor of chaat, how much is the spice, tikhapan kitna hona chahiye. They know what they're eating, and that's why this whole confusion of subjective definition of what a good food is. However, it doesn't really matter for a brand like Haldiram. Any product, like I'm in the business of brewery, beer is not an Indian product. It started from Germany, Norway. We can play around with the wines. We can play around with the consumer's mindset. I once put a 1,40,000 rupees wine bottle into a Sula bottle, and I called 10 most of the, with due respect, the wine connoisseurs, and I said, this is what we are going to give you. And it was actually Sula, and they just saw the bottle of Chateau Latour, a premium cru wine, and they said, wow, this is the best wine we have ever tasted. So, in beers, one beer which was not selling very well in my brewery, and everybody said it's very bitter, it's very strong. I just stopped selling it for a week, revamped it, and I said this is Oktoberfest special beer, and this is not meant for beginners. That tagline made everybody try. It's like having tequila, right? And they say, oh wow, this is the best beer, so strong. Wow, this is not. And the beginners who are youngsters, they're saying, I have to try this because it's so bitter. It's the whole courage and the bravery coming in. So marketing plays a lot of role in creating stories in consumers' mind, especially if the product is not from the indigenous location, right? So Indian brands, yes, there is always a challenge. You see burgers today, right? There are Indian burgers, Indian flavor burgers, there are Korean burgers, there is Japanese katsu burgers, there's so much going around. So you can fiddle around. Immediately if you do something with idlis and say idlis with egg and all, people are not ready to do it. So probably answering the question you were asked is, Indian cuisine में थोड़ा सा challenge होता है, right? Because people know what they know. International cuisine में people don't know what is authentic jasmine rice. You can play around with their mindset, and it's easier to create a brand in India where the product doesn't belong to originally from India. Probably this is one thought I wanted to share. I don't know how many of you agree, but that's my experience.
So quick to follow up with you. Did you ask about an Indian cuisine brand or an Indian brand with any kind of Indian cuisine? Okay, then I think he answered your question. Sorry, can we have the...
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sridhar, representing Go Pizza. My question is any one of you. Is it easy to handle master franchisee or a single, the multiple franchises? Because handling one franchise is easier than handling 10, because you will have to face 10 owners instead of...
I'll take that.
Yeah.
So do you mean one same franchise, multiple shops or different brands?
No, for example, Karnataka can be a one master franchisee.
Okay. So
instead of having 100 of owners in Karnataka, handling 100 owners will be tough.
Sorry, can you...
So handling a master franchisee is better than the handling 100 of franchises.
Individual franchises.
Individual franchises, yes.
Okay, then for that I'm going
I understand it is, finding a one big master franchise is later, but still.
No, again, I think that comes down to how you want to strategize your growth. And if you're getting a partner, like they said, where the franchise partner has got his infrastructure and ecosystem to support multiple outlets and, scalability for the company, I think that would definitely make more sense. And if you're starting off small and then looking to, grow up later, and at some point you realize, okay, now I've got a few individual franchises and it's doing good, and now I want to scale it up. Or if you're again looking at a master franchise from day one, you need to make sure that your supply chain logistics is ready. You need to make sure that you're able to sustain the number of shops opening every month, every week, whatever it is. Whether it comes to not just the food, also the manpower, the technical process, etc. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Do you want to add on something to it?
No, I totally agree with what you mentioned. So it's totally up to the brand as a strategy. So while it's definitely easy to deal with one person, as it sounds, but it also comes in with its own challenges because, when you are into master franchisee, the franchisee requires a much bigger support and everything. So totally about how the brand is looking at the market, what kind of strategy they want to get in. There's no right or wrong there, but it's totally at what stage you are. So it might be much easier when at the beginning if you look for a master franchisee because you have a smaller team than one person to coordinate kind of a thing. But at a later stage, it's much easier having multiple single partners is how I would answer.
Any other question? I'll come to both of you.
Yeah, hi. My name is Nishant. I own one restaurant. So I want to now start giving out, franchises. I'm looking for people who will take up a franchisee of my brand. Now, how can I ensure as a small brand, a single restaurant, that the people who take, my brand as a franchisee follow the same ethics, which I am very particular about, that I have maintained till now? What are your points on that, as experienced people? How can we ensure that they stick to my ethics and do not fiddle around, with the quality of the food, don't do things which is considered unethical, like, probably fake reviews on Zomato, etc., etc. Are there any things that you all do over there, to ensure that this happens or does not happen?
So is it a restaurant with an experience or is it a restaurant with just product?
Sorry, I didn't
Is this a
get
QSR or it's a restaurant with a theme?
It's a steakhouse.
It's a steakhouse.
Yeah.
So principally, I look at businesses into two broad categories. One is a product-based business model, and the second is experience-based business model, which also have a very strong product role to play. Now, if it's just a product, it's obviously easier for you to start scaling because the dependency on people reduces a lot. And automation, machine technologies, different technologies will definitely add value to start scaling your business faster. But if at all are you in a business of a restaurant, which is a theme where experience and ambience and staff is playing a role, comes into picture, then you have to start thinking twice before scaling up. I'm the only restaurant owner here which is not into a QSR model. I'm more into our experience. So when we did Big Brewski, it was not easy for us to expand Big Brewski, right? The more experiential the restaurant becomes in terms of dependency of employees giving the experience, ambience, music, furnitures, that is where the challenges actually start. If you start franchising an experience-based restaurant, it requires you to focus more on training, more on audits. For example, in Hard Rock Cafe, there was an international audit which used to be done across all outlets in India every quarter. It was a list of 370 points and 3 days of extensive audit. And it had serious repercussions. If you fail and if you score below 75%, it had sales and marketing and operations and training and compliance and every smallest thing, hygiene. It was so much detailed that we used to fear as master franchisee owners that if we fail, the international Hard Rock team is going to take away the franchisee. So make your processes more stringent if you are more experiential restaurant, I would say.
Unfortunately, we've got to wind up right now. I've just got an instruction. So if there's any more questions, you guys can always find us around. We will be hanging around. You can come and talk to us and we will be happy to answer them. Yeah. Thank you.
So I'm sure